So your website, and this, again, this can be a personal website like derekbruff.org, laceypascal.com. It can be your LinkedIn profile, etc. Your website, whatever you're using, or your faculty profile, your website at Vanderbilt. Some of you might have a my.vanderbilt.edu website. It's helping people understand your work. What do you want them to know about your work? To see what you have done. So let's look at like, what have you published? What have you been talking about? What have you been teaching? What's been your involvement at Vanderbilt, at previous institutions where you may have worked? And then what are you doing right now? What is your current research focus? And what are you wanting people to know that you're talking about right now? So if someone's wanting to maybe co-author a paper or something, they know, oh, so-and-so, they're working on the same thing. We might be able to collaborate on something. You don't have to wait until you publish to share some of the information about what you're researching on. And then for people to get to know you and what's important to you. And that might be beyond your work. You might have other things that you want people to know that you're involved with. If you're involved in causes and other things that you think are important for people to know about you, let's, definitely highlight that on those websites. And then obviously, then it's a way to get in contact with you. So let's say they do want to collaborate with you, or they saw you speak at a conference and they want to follow up and ask a question about something, that there's a way for them to get in contact with you. And that can be either on LinkedIn. They can just contact you right through LinkedIn. On your website, you could set up something where they could email you. You can have a form that goes to you, all sorts of ways, but just so that someone has a way to get in contact with you. Also, from your website, if you do create these social media profiles, link off to them. Again, the internet is all about the links and interlinking. So you want to link from your Vanderbilt website to whatever your preferred external Vanderbilt website is too. So let's get that link structure in place. Then from that website, I've got a Twitter profile that I actually use to talk about my research or to engage with people at conferences. Then link from your personal website to your Twitter profile. From your Twitter profile, make sure you link back to your website. So everywhere that you can have a link back and forth, you're creating that network that is allowing people to find you. So no matter where they might land on your Twitter profile, but you're making it easy for them to find your website. They might land on the Vanderbilt website, so you're going to make it easy for them to land on your Twitter profile next. So it's, again, all about the interlinking, because all of the search engines, that's how they work, is they go to a site, and then when you hear that term web crawling, literally that just means they're crawling every single link on that page. So you want to make sure the links are there for them to crawl, to then create that persona in Google that says, oh, well, this is Derek on vanderbilt.edu. And Derek says derekbruff.com is also about the same Derek Bruff. And derekbruff.com says at Derek Bruff on Twitter is the same Derek. And Google follows that logic, and that's how they decide this is who Derek Bruff is from Google's eye, is because you're laying that pathway out. If you don't lay that pathway out, it's going to try and figure it out on its own. And sometimes it's not going to map it up correctly. So the more you can be proactive about making sure the right links are in the right place, the better your profile is going to look. Next slide.
Perfect. Okay, so
and then we're to Jacqueline, the best part of the presentation.
Well, don't set the bar too high, don't Okay, now that Lacey has so beautifully laid out all of the reasons that you would want to have a presence, I wanted to take a minute to look at some of the social networks that you might be thinking about selecting, some that maybe you hadn't considered before, and starting with Facebook. So Facebook is a platform that we really consider to be personal and primarily for connecting with your friends and family. So this generally isn't a space where we recommend establishing a quote unquote professional presence unless you have, a brand page, which I don't necessarily think is quite right for most academics. But there are some ways that you can take advantage of Facebook in a professional way. And one of them is by joining groups. So if you look on Facebook, you will see that there are groups for all kinds of interesting areas of research, different sort of hobbies, different passions. And you'll notice here I included a screenshot from a group that I'm in, which is a social media professors community group, where people do things like, as you see here, crowdsource ideas. They do things like share resources. They look for feedback on projects they're working on, share highlights that have resonated with their students. And sometimes they just kind of use this group as a space to vent to a community of peers. And so if you go to Facebook and you search for phrases that are associated with your work and filter your search results to show just groups, you will likely turn up at least a few results of groups that are filled with anywhere from like a dozen to a couple 100,000 people who are networking, who are asking questions, offering advice and support, things like that. So in that way, Facebook can be used professionally. Additionally, I would highly recommend liking the pages of organizations and outlets and publications that you're associated with. It is a great way to stay connected and to also make a note of what they are sharing and what they are posting. And as we were talking about Facebook, and we kind of got into this a little bit before, but I also wanted to make a note to consider your privacy settings. And this is true for all platforms really, but Facebook in particular, as we mentioned, has been around for over a decade now. And it may contain all kinds of personal information, photos you were tagged in 10 years ago and forgot about, things like that. And so I want to make sure that you are comfortable with who has access to what you're sharing. And as Lacey mentioned, the best way to do that if you're not sure is just to kind of Google how to make my Facebook private. And that will lead you to, you know, all kinds of instructions on the different levels of privacy settings that you have for any one of these channels. So something to consider about particularly for Facebook, because I know that's where we maybe did a lot of sharing before any of us really understood how to use social media. But it's also true for these other platforms as well, considering whether you want to be completely private or you want to have that sort of public professional account. The next channel I want to look at is Twitter. And as we go through this presentation, you're going to see a lot of examples of content that takes place on Twitter. And that is because I think it is the right choice as a platform for most, if not all of the people who are on this call today. And speaking of people on this call today, I think Lisa might actually be on this call. You've made it into my highlight screenshots. So if you see yourself there, hello. And the reason that I recommend Twitter so strongly is because it is the best and easiest place to find and join local, national, and global conversations about the things that you care about. Twitter is all about conversations. It is all about sort of coming together around topics. And each day, Twitter even tells you what people are talking about that day through its trending section that shows you what topics, what stories are popular that day. And you can refine that to be as local as Nashville or as global as the entire world. It's also great for reaching journalists. We consider Twitter almost like the modern news desk. So it's great to sort of follow and make those connections. And also looking for outlets, students, peers, organizations you're associated with, artists that you like, you know, brands that you're interested in. They all likely have a Twitter. And because of that, they instantly become accessible to you through simply tweeting at them when you have a professional Twitter as well. One of the main challenges of Twitter is that it does require a high posting frequency and a pretty high level of ongoing engagement to kind of stand out and be seen. There is just so much content populating on Twitter on any given day that, you know, in order to sort of maintain relevance and to be consistently showing up in your followers' feeds, you do need to be posting quite a bit. And I know that it can be difficult. We're going to talk about some ways, what types of content you should be creating, what that looks like. But I really liked these two examples in particular from Vanderbilt faculty to show what it looks like when you're tweeting and promoting your work and what that sort of looks like and how you go about doing that. I thought these were two really great examples. One promoting from Lisa, who was part of a symposium, did a great job of tagging the organizations that were associated with that and also using the hashtag. We'll talk about tagging and hashtagging in a bit. And similarly, Christy Clark also was funded for a major project and tweeted about that to let her followers know. It's a great way to have this sort of instant communication and be constantly updating and promoting what you're working on. So the next is LinkedIn. LinkedIn is the more sort of professional network. It is a platform primarily for networking and thought leadership. It's a social network that's a little bit more passive and doesn't necessarily require constant updating, which is nice. But the main reason that we recommend at least setting up a LinkedIn account, which as you just saw in Derek's results, in Lacey's results, and in the live search that we did, LinkedIn shows up very high in search rankings. So even if you just have a profile that sort of lists your resume, your credentials, links out to your website, maybe your other social networks, maybe some work that you've done, it's great to have that account and establish it so that it's showing up high in your search results. And this account can be as low or high maintenance as you'd like it to be. Some people just create a page and sort of passively update it the same way they would a CV. That's sort of how I use it. And others are very active in sharing things like news, research, articles they've been mentioned in. But if you never post on LinkedIn beyond updating your page and checking your messages, that's actually a perfectly okay way to use this social network. And if you're a little bit hesitant about creating social media, this might be a good first page for you to start with, as long as you are just keeping it updated and connecting with the people who are trying to connect with you or message you, so that you're still emphasizing the social aspect of it. Like Facebook, LinkedIn also has a great groups function. It does tend to be more geared towards sort of corporate professional life, but there are groups there for professors, researchers, creatives, hobbyists on a wide range of topics. So I also recommend, if you are looking to network, if you are looking to grow and build a community, checking out the LinkedIn groups as well. Next, we have Instagram. So Instagram is an interesting platform because it can really go one of two ways, depending on what type of work you do. You could use this just as you do Facebook, just as sort of a personal private network for your friends and your family, or you could look for opportunities to harness it in more of sort of a professional way. But this is by no means a platform for everyone. And that's because what makes Instagram sort of unique is that it is almost exclusively visual focused. So you need to have compelling images and or videos in order to be successful on this platform. And that can be kind of difficult to access in a consistent way. But if you are someone who works with a very, very visual form, you're someone who has lots of interesting things that you're looking at every day. Maybe you're someone who creates things that are very visual. Maybe you're a scientist who has interesting access to sort of scientific visuals. This can be a great platform for you as a professional if you sort of are around those visual opportunities often. This platform also skews a bit younger, although that demographic is shifting pretty rapidly. But we noticed that Instagram is still the platform of choice for our current student audience as a place to connect, at least with Vanderbilt. And it's I would say by far where our student audience is currently. So if you're looking to reach students, this is a good place to do it. And another fantastic feature of Instagram is Instagram stories. So Instagram stories will show up at the very top of an Instagram feed, the first thing you see right when you open the app. And this is sort of a more casual, but still very visual space on Instagram where you can share photos and videos that disappear after 24 hours. So posts on your Instagram stories should typically be things that are a little bit more fleeting. They can be quick snapshots, instant updates behind the scenes, things you're doing in the moment, things like that. And they typically disappear after 24 hours unless you save them to your highlights, which essentially saves and pins your favorite, your selected Instagram stories to the top of your page, which can be a great way to organize and highlight the different aspects of your life and work. Instagram is still kind of maturing as a platform, so I would say it's probably not right for everyone unless you are, very, very visual and have some level of comfortability on this platform already. And the last platform I want to talk about is TikTok. So TikTok gets sort of a bad rep sometimes for being just like viral dances and like pranks from teenagers. And that's not totally incorrect. But as TikTok is sort of maturing as a platform, we are seeing it used more and more as a space for storytelling, for creating videos that comment on news, on pop culture, on trending topics, on more serious issues. And essentially the gist of TikTok is that you can create up to 3 minutes of video, although most are much shorter than that. And what makes TikTok unique is that it has a very, very proficient algorithm that is excellent at putting your content in front of audience that it thinks would be interested in what you have to say. And so if you're someone who is really passionate about sharing your work with, casual sort of lay audiences, TikTok is really hot right now for that. That said, it takes quite a bit of time and work to consistently produce engaging videos in a sort of TikTok style. But if you are someone who likes the idea of having your ideas or your research shared widely with sort of normal audiences, if you will, one way that you might be able to harness the power of TikTok is by working directly with me on the Vanderbilt team. We recently launched a TikTok for Vanderbilt, and we have seen great success in sharing out videos highlighting research from Vanderbilt faculty. And we've been sharing bits of sort of short, snappy research that have been really well received with our audience. Just this past Friday, we shared a video highlighting a partnership between a Vanderbilt engineer and the Tennessee Department of Transportation about a study they're doing on traffic flow. And that generated almost 300,000 views in just a couple of days. So it is a very powerful platform. If you are someone who is interested in potentially creating a video with us, my information is available at the end of this presentation, and I'm sure Derek can send it out as well. We'd love to work together to share some of your research here. Yeah, Derek asks, does anyone on the call already use TikTok professionally? Anyone out there making videos? Okay, yeah, it's new. It's new and it can be a little bit scary. It can be an intimidating space because it is so new and it is so unlike so many of our other social networks. But if this is something you're interested in, feel free to message me. It makes you feel old. It makes me feel old also. I don't, it is a odd space. It has a culture of its own. It is sort of its own language. TikTok is a very sort of odd and unique platform. But if you are someone who is interested in, explaining research in a non-complicated way, or telling a story, or commenting on a bit of news or pop culture, explaining something interesting you're working on, if that sounds like you, I'd love for you to message me or email me after this, and we can work on maybe getting you up on our TikTok. You can dip your feet in that way.